Hello everyone, today we're going to be turning this Dell Wyse 3040 into a super simple NAS. Now to do this, all we're going to be doing is installing Ubuntu Server and connecting some hard drives, and then use some different programs like Samba or just built-in SFTP to access the files on them. Now I've tried before to get other OSs like TrueNAS or OpenMediaVault running on Dell Wyse, but it's just never ended well. The Dell Wyse is just too weak, not enough RAM, wouldn't go on there properly, missing instruction sets. Who knows? Didn't work. So today we're just going to be setting up a super simple NAS on Ubuntu Server. Now first with Dell Wyse 3040, the power budget is very small. The Dell Wyse itself only asks for 15 watts, 5V 3A, and your average hard drive will easily use 5V 700 milliamps. So you really can't power a lot of drives off the Dell Wyse itself. I'd recommend building something like this if you just have a spare USB or two and just want to plug them into the Dell Wyse and make a simple NAS. The Dell Wyse is quite a nice low power machine, but if you need more than like 2 drives for your NAS, just get a real computer. The Dell Wyse just doesn't make sense for that anymore. Now let's get started. To start with, we're just going to have to install Ubuntu Server, and to do that we're going to need to flash it to our SSD. Now that we've got our drive flashed with Ubuntu Server, all we have to do is plug in the power to our Dell Wyse, plug in the drive. Also we need to plug in our Ethernet, our monitor and keyboard. Now because Dell BIOS is designed terribly, it can also be quite helpful to also have a mouse plugged in. Now all we got to do is turn on the Dell Wyse and spam F2 to enter the BIOS. Once you're in BIOS, first we just need to unlock it by going down to unlock at the bottom, and the password by default on most Dell Wyses is Fireport. Enter and we're unlocked. Now we're going to want to set your whatever USB stick you're using. I'm using an Intel Optane to top priority. Don't uncheck Ubuntu on this list, otherwise the Dell Wyse won't actually boot off Ubuntu once it's installed. Now you can just hit apply and exit. If you don't have a mouse, you can also do this with tab, but it's a pain in the ass. And wait for the Dell Wyse to boot up. Once you see the language select menu, you just want to select your language. And because we're using Ubuntu 24, I'm going to continue without updating. Now the defaults are fine, and just wait. Now we're going to want to select Ubuntu Server Minimize, because our Dell Wyse only has 8GB of storage. And done. Now the default network config is normally fine, so we'll just hit enter. Ignore this. And then wait for it to test the mirror. Once that's done, just hit done, and now you can choose your disk. The default's normally set up correctly, and you normally want to uncheck this. Now just click done, and done. Continue, and wait for it to install. Now you just want to put your name. I'm just using test for all of this. I recommend keeping all 3 of these the same, otherwise it can get confusing. Password, I was using 1234, but you should probably put something more secure, as you will be using this password for accessing your data. Now you can just hit done, skip that, continue, and make sure you enable install OpenSSH server. And you can just click done and wait for it to install. Click done on here because you don't need any of those. Once it's done installing, you can just go down, hit reboot now, and wait for the system to reboot. Once it's booted up, you can just log in using the login credentials you set earlier. Now you've logged in, the only command we're going to want to run is IP-A. Now if we look in this command, we should be able to see that under enp1so we have this computer's local IP. You could also get this by looking up in your router. Now once you have your local IP, all you need to do is go to a terminal program. I'm using PARTUUID, you could use any, and type in the local IP and log in as the credentials you set earlier. Now, because we have this set up, we can simply unplug the keyboard and mouse and monitor from the Dell Wyse and plug in our hard drive. I'm using this 500 gig one. Now the first command we're going to run is lsblk to list drives. And as you can see, here is my hard drive. And it's labelled SDA1. Now we're going to want to run sudo mkfs.ext4 /dev/sda, and as you can see it's just labelled SDA, so hit Y if it complains and wait for it to format the drive to ext4. Once it's formatted, we're going to need to mount it. To do this, we're going to run sudo mkdir-p/mnt/ and name you want to mount it to. This will only actually create a file path to mount it to. This isn't actually mounting it. I'm just going to call it st1 for storage 1. Now we're going to want to mount the drive to the location we just made by using sudo mount /dev/sda1 sda, because that's the name of our drive, space the mount path we just made, so /mnt/st1. Now the drive is mounted, we should just be able to CD into it. The ls to list what's in here. We can see it has the lost and found because there's no files on the drive. Now, every time we reboot this drive, it's not going to get remounted, so we should set it up to automatically mount on boot. To do this, we first need to find the ID of the drive using blkid, and you want to copy this. Now you'll need to run sudo nano /etc/fstab. Nano is just a text editor to edit the file. We installed it earlier. As you can see now in the text editor, now we want to add the line uuid equals the ID we just copied /mnt/st1 ext4 to automatically mount the drive. Now to save this, you're just going to want to run Ctrl X and then Y. Now all we have to do to set this up as a basic SFTP server is run one final command. Sudo chown-r-test, and then the user code on the user again, /mnt/ whatever you name your storage. Now that you've done that, you can go to any program you want, like FileZilla. And you can add the site. Now for the protocol, you can use FTP or SFTP. For the host, you're going to want to put the IP of your Dell Wyse, so 192.168.25 for me. This is the same one that was given to you by IPA. For the user, you're going to set your username, and for the password, you're going to put the password you set. Now you can just hit connect. Okay, and as you can see, we are now on this directory. Now this isn't exactly where you access your files, because this is just the entire storage of the Dell Wyse, so you have to find your folder. This will be where you mounted it, so /mnt, so find mnt, and then storage 1. Then as you can see, we have our files, and I can just dump more on here or pull them off, and we have a super simple NAS setup. Now having to use a SFTP program like FileZilla or WinSCP or any of the others isn't very convenient. So now we're going to set up Samba for SMB in Windows and sort of Linux, where it never really works properly in Linux. To start this, what you're going to need to do is sudo apt install Samba and swdd2. Samba is what we're actually using for the file sharing, and swdd2 is simply to make Windows detection work properly. Now we're going to once again use the chown command, set some permissions. So we're going to want to run sudo chown, your user, colon your user again, so then the directory of your files, then a directory of where you want to store your files, so /mnt/st1. Now you're going to run chmod 775 /mnt/ the storage of your files again. Now you're going to want to configure Samba. To do this, you're just going to run sudo nano /etc/samba/smb.conf. Now you're just going to want to go straight to the bottom and paste in the part I left in the description. If it didn't tab in properly, you're going to want to change your path to the SSD or hard drive. Now you need to set a password for the SMB server. So to do this, you're just going to run sudo SMB pass wd /a space test. Now you can set your password. I'm just using 1234 again. Now you just go on that command again, but instead of -a with -e. So enable it. Now it's going to want to restart Samba by running sudo systemctl restart smbd. Now I'm going to want to enable it. And finally, you're going to want to make sure it's running properly by running status. As you can see, it's actually been running correctly. Now on a Windows PC, we can simply go to / the IP address, so 192.168.0.25, and /shared, enter the username and password, so test and 1234. And as you can see, we have access to our files. So if we just open up an image, we can see, oh, very exciting, it works. Now you're probably thinking by now, doesn't a NAS normally have more than one SSD or hard drive? And yes, but if you try and plug more than one into this Dell Wyse, the first issue you're going to run into is power. The Dell Wyse simply cannot run more than about one hard drive or maybe two SSDs or USB sticks. You could get around this issue with a powered USB hub, but one way or another things start to get janky and it's just not great. Another issue is the Dell Wyse CPU and RAM is so weak that if you want to put those two more than one drives in RAID arrays, that's just not going to end well and it's going to slow down things quite a lot. So it's just not worth it. If you do want to have a second drive, the best bet is just to mount it normally like the first drive, and then either create another Samba share for it or just access it through SFTP. It will also be in the MNT directory, just as a second drive. If you want more than just like one or two drives, at that point it's probably worth getting a proper system and building a proper NAS with TrueNAS or OpenMediaVault or something. The Dell Wyse just isn't really sufficient anymore. Anyway, now on to what kind of speeds we can get. To start with, we're just going to transfer one large video file to the NAS using FileZilla and SFTP. And as we can see, we get speeds of about 70ish megabyte a second, times that by 8 to get to gigabit, which is okay. I think that's more limited by my PC and just random things. The CPU usage is reasonably low. If we try and copy a few more files at the same time, we can push all the way up to about 100 megabyte a second, which is about the limit of the NIC. But as we can see, this is really heavily loading the